longer you spend in bonsai, the more you, by I guess trial and error, will become a demonstrator whether you want it or not, because people start wanting to know what you've got in your head and see if they can apply it to the way they do bonsai. One of the good things about coming and demonstrating at bonsai clubs is I'm appreciating the converted. This is not a hostile audience, in other words. You all are here for the same reason. You all have a fascination and appreciation, hopefully, for, I guess, horticulture and art combined in a pot, hence the name bonsai, which really means tree in a pot. But I'm very, I guess I'm probably want to challenge you to remember that just because the tree's in a pot doesn't make it a bonsai. You can take a tree from a nursery, stick it in a pot and call it a bonsai. It doesn't necessarily make it a true bonsai by, I guess, certainly the opinion of the Japanese. Bonsai actually has style. It has actually some form of human endeavour put into it, and actually has almost, believe it or not, a reflection of your own personality. So bonsai is really a combination of the practice of keeping the plant alive, which you using your own, I guess, artistic license to create something that reflects maybe something of you and yourself. And you might find that the more you start playing in bonsai and trying to be artistic, the more people will recognise your style of tree, because we all have our own leaning towards the type of tree that we like to create. So bonsai is, for me, as much about art as what it is about trying to learn and keep the tree actually alive in a very small pot. And as you all know, it can sometimes be a challenge to keep small trees like this alive as against bigger trees, obviously, even bigger again than this. So the smaller the tree, obviously, the more demand on the tree, particularly for water. And with Melbourne and Geelong's weather pattern so extreme from one extreme to the next, summer can be quite a danger. And if you like to grow, say, maple trees like this one down here, it can be quite a challenge to keep the leaves on the tree during summer, so you can appreciate their autumn colour that they have, particularly when you suddenly get a 40-degree day with a real hard north wind. You can go to work and come back that day and find the leaves have all dried up and fallen off the tree. So it is a challenge to sometimes appreciate some of the things that we like about particular species of trees, and we sometimes find ourselves creating artificial environments to, I guess, to sustain the tree so that we can enjoy the things we like about them. Now what I've got here, just, I guess, typical species you'll see out there in bonsai land, people that use bonsai trees. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I believe in about the philosophy of maintaining the tree and some of the things that I do throughout the seasons to actually, I guess, enhance the tree in time to come. And I guess one of the most important things about maintaining your bonsai is actually pruning it and styling it, and actually then trying to maintain that, I guess, that style and that prune about the tree, because potentially, if left to their own devices, any plant will turn into a real long-leggy mess eventually. So they just grow and keep growing, and they stop at the end of the season, they'll grow again. So bonsai actually requires us to be quite diligent in pruning, whether it be hedging the tree, which is like maintaining a topiary, or selectively pruning it. Without that constant attention, your tree very quickly loses that whole, I guess, that illusion or that attraction that you had for it. So there's all various reasons for pruning and maintaining the tree. So I guess I'll start maybe with one of the most misunderstood truths, in my opinion. I see a lot of these trees die, and people say to me, well, I don't know why it died. It died for no reason at all. And this is our humble needle, or squamata, or Pecumnus juniper that you see out there. A lot of people love these trees. When I worked in the nursery industry on the side, this was a common tree that we mass produced. You can take a tree from a container, a plastic container, and instantly create a tree, put it in the pot and sell it off very quickly. So it's a very commercialised tree as far as the success of turning into bonsai. They have some absolutely sensational shapes. They are naturally a prostate, and by that I mean a creeping tree that grows along the ground. So the nursery industry is very common, trains them up sticks, puts off branches, lets it shoot out, and then we actually style the tree and then, I guess, send it out into the environment for people to buy. So one of the things that people struggle to do is, a lot of people say to me, I don't like growing these needle junipers because they die for no reason at all. I have a branch just die for no reason at all, or I don't have a lot of success, so I don't grow them. In most cases, the problems I see, obviously apart from not watering the trees, insect attack. These are very susceptible to mite, and unfortunately, it's usually too late before you realise you've got a mite attack, because they're so hard to spot, and they quickly can sap a whole branch very, very fast and very quickly without you realising it, and then suddenly the branch starts to die back and you can't see why, and then it just continues to die back, and unless the tree's diagnosed quickly, it will continue to regresses to a point where it actually eventually dies, or you give up and throw it away because you're not sure exactly why it's done. So these trees are very susceptible to mites, and the reason they get in here and they hide very well. So whether I've got mites on my trees or not, I spray my trees regularly, up to 4 times a year, particularly these types of junipers, because I don't want to wait for the chance that I have no mite. If you want to check your trees for mites, it can be as easy as a white paper underneath the foliage. Ruffle the foliage, get out your magnifying glass and check that piece of white paper, and you'll see mites crawling around on the paper if you actually have them. And they can very quickly destroy your tree. There's nothing worse than spending 10 to 15 years on a tree, or 20 like this one's had on it, and then have a whole branch, which could be a major direction branch, die for no reason at all, and you can't work out why. So be careful with mites. Now, you can see one tree here that looks like it's been military haircut, I guess, one better word. You see one here that's been let go, a bit like the one over there on the corner there. I brought this in as a demonstration, or as just to show you the before and after. Even though this is most probably a Procumbrance, and this is a Squamata, the treatment is exactly the same. The first myth you need to be careful of is people will say to you, it's not a myth, it's probably reality. They'll say you can't cut junipers with scissors because it browns the foliage, and they're 100% correct. If you cut a juniper with scissors, you will brown off the foliage. And if you come and have a quick look at this tree, you'll see evidence throughout the tree where it's browned off, where the scissors cut through the foliage. And that's unavoidable. But what you've got to understand is what will grow from around that area will very quickly cover up and hide where that shoot has been cut off and it's browned off. So these trees will bud back on old wood very easily. You've just got to be prepared to really cut them back hard to force bud back everywhere like a tree. If you come and have a look at this tree, you'll see where it's browned up in places, and you'll see where if you look in between some of the sub-branches, you can see where the new growth has actually started to take off like crazy. Within 3 months' time, this whole tree will be covered again. This tree, I knock it back ruthlessly like this, at least every 2 to 3 years, depending on how well I get it to grow throughout that year and what sort of growth season we have. So, and the reason I cut it back hard is the growth extends very quickly, and that's not what you want with any bonsai tree. You don't want the growth to extend too far out past the tree because it becomes very leggy and loses the scale perspective of what a bonsai tree is. And it's the same with any tree, no matter what species it is, it can very quickly elongate out past the tree and become far too long. So you have the branch right out here with the foliage right out at the end eventually if you do nothing about pruning. So if you just let it go and very lightly tip prune it, it marches out year after year after year. And if you have a look at foliage, typical foliage of one of these junipers, you'll see they grow very similar to what a pine grows. They actually whirl out very, very similar to a pine. So if you have a look, you'll see where the foliage is actually shooting out from around the shoot and just whirling out quite quickly. And if left to its own devices, will continue to divide, and then shoot out continually. It'll stop, and then next year's going to do the same. So what happens is it gets further and further and further out. Why is that bad? First thing it does is it makes the tree look young. And the reason it makes the tree look young is it shifts your focus and the balance of the tree. Suddenly you can't see the structure of the branch because it's so full of foliage. What you're trying to do, what you need to remind yourself is you're trying to create the illusion of age. So you're trying to make a tree that may only be a very young tree look older than what it really is. A prime example is if you look at a tree like this, the whole idea is I'm trying to make that tree look like it's 100 plus years old. And I've got to use every trick in the book to convince you that that's what it is, because in fact it's not. This tree is exactly 13 years and 9 months old. So it's not that old. And I'm using as many tricks as I can to convince you that it's actually 50 plus years old. And yet if I hold it against a tree that is in excess of 50 years old, it's not hard to tell. That's actually way over 50 years old. So again, the illusion is the same. It's you're trying to move the balance. When this becomes full of foliage, the structure disappears. The structure actually gives the illusion of age. So remember that in the back of your mind. The structure of a branch helps to mimic and give the realization of age. You can see it very clearly on here. This is not a very old tree either. It's probably 15 to 20 years old. You can see that's all growth this year, or this season since spring started. And it's got a very big mass of foliage volume. And what needs to happen now is it needs to be cut back now to the structure of the branch. Firstly, to control the growth, because I don't want growth in the wrong direction. I want to discourage, where I can possibly, growth going straight up, which is vertical. I want to encourage horizontal growth so that you can see the structure of the layers that are underneath the branches. So this needs to be cut firstly to remove the unwanted growth, whether it be underneath or straight up, but also to select the buds that are growing in the direction I want and the leaves that are growing. So I'm going to show you how easy that is to maintain. Now, the interesting thing about elm trees, and that's an elm, that's an elm, and that's an elm too. That's a Chinese elm. So this is the common one you see every day out there, mass-produced in bonsai land. This is a Catlin elm. Bobby, you remember about the Catlin elms? They're not that easy to get anymore. So this is a Catlin elm grown from probably 1 year old seedling from our old mate Ted. So they're not easy to find, Catlin elms. They're, in my opinion, the best elm tree species out there because of the minute natural size of the leaves. If fed well and looked after, it can actually hold its leaves most of the year as well, and in a lot of cases won't drop the leaves throughout the year. This is Suju elm. So it's actually a different species again, natural cork bark, a very interesting little tree. Looks aged very quickly. Again, 3 different types of elm trees that are very commonly grown. Obviously, the students are here. This is a humble, noxious weed, Cotoneaster, Cotoneaster, however you want to pronounce it. It's in and about to burst into flowers. I've got one little flower on there now. So that's the humble little Cotoneaster, which actually, in seriousness, makes a very nice little bonsai tree. It's a very old tree. Got a story behind that tree. I completely cut this tree here back to its base structure this year for the first time in about 3 years. And you can see it's gone crazy. You can see how much growth that's put on. This has put very little growth on. So the combination of root pruning and cutting it back have really invigorated the tree. You can see it's really gone, really gone off like a startup with elm, I guess. So typically, if you're in a hurry, you could almost shear it. So you could come here with a very set pair of sharp scissors, or here, and you could shear it back to a basic triangle shape, and it would look pretty pleasing to the eye. Whether each shoot is in the direction you want is another thing. So if you've got the patience and you want to go through each shoot and actually make sure that it is growing in the right direction, then you can do that. But you can also hedge elm trees to a large degree, and they will respond favourably. They will reshoot from anywhere you cut them. So you don't have to sit here meticulously and look at the branch and go, okay, I want the next leaf to grow to the left side. Oh, here's the left one. You don't have to be that meticulous. If you want to be, I encourage you to be there, but you'll be here for 4 hours doing with one of the big elm trees. So if you've got a few elm trees and you don't have a lot of time, you can just hedge it. So you can stick it up in the air like this, and you can then just go over and you can actually just gently cut back to the shape you want. Bearing in mind that you are cutting back to maintain the shape of the tree and the shape we desire, whether we want it or not, believe it or not, is a triangle. And that's what we believe is the appropriate bonsai shape. Usually the shape you see on a Western conifer. Big conifer growing on the tree. Not necessarily the natural shape of elm trees, by the way. I doubt whether you'll ever find an elm tree grows like that in the real world. They're very much broom style trees. They're very strong under the lower branches. They whip down to the ground on the big 200-300-year-old elm trees. You go to the botanical gardens and see how they grow for real. Remember I said to you about here in Endeavour? Most of these trees are grown as I envision them in here. Not grown as they really would in the real world. So that's something you've got to think about, what's right for you. Some people get hooked on having this aesthetic vision of the bonsai, and some go, oh no, I want the tree to grow as it would naturally grow out there in the wild. So if you do grow it as it would naturally grow in the wild, then you still need to style it. Still needs to have some style about it. You can't just say, oh, it's a natural style, because that's not going to work. You still have to have an idea of what the style would look like, and obviously then cut it back to the right, to the right idea. And I'll bring one up in a second, which is another species I see growing quite regularly, which is Australian native. Typical triangle shapes, they've got heavy low branches, light low top branches. The reason they're like that is because of the fact that the top of the tree is the youngest, the bottom of the tree is the oldest. So if the bottom of the tree is the oldest, which has been growing longer, the bottom, so therefore should have longer branches because it's been growing longer. So that if you use logic, that's the reason they do that, because the bottom of the tree's older, it's supposed to look older, so therefore should have longer branches on it because they've been growing a lot longer than the top of the tree. Tops of the tree obviously are always the youngest, so therefore they are supposed to have the least amount of foliage. So you can see quite quickly how easy it is. I mean, I don't want to sit in front of you and prune the tree religiously because it's probably as exciting as watching someone paint a fence or paint your walls. You can see very quickly you start pruning the tree taking back into the leaf buds. You'll get your tree shape back very quickly, and then the tree will reshoot again, and it will start to reshoot again in a couple of weeks' time, particularly in the middle of or in between each leaf now. It'll shoot up very, very quickly. Elms are reliable for counter-producing massive regrowth regularly. And probably in some cases, the more you let them shoot out, the greater they'll regrow back with more vigour. What I'm also looking for anything that's growing straight up, because I don't want anything that's growing up. I want to encourage horizontal, not vertical growth. So anything that's growing straight up obviously is not going to work for me. The same can be said for anything growing straight down too, as growing in the wrong direction. So I'm just almost hedging to a degree. Anything growing straight up, just trying to bring the tree back, right back to the first 4 to 2 sets of leaves, depending on what I'm doing, and then also allows you to start to see the structure. You can see the distance between each branch now. And it actually tends to encourage some regrowth now. So it's not hard to do. It's just you've got to be patient. But what I encourage you to do is, if you are going to grow trees like this, really prune them back so that you encourage the growth. Because the more growth that you encourage, the smaller you'll get your leaves, bit by bit by bit. It's not hard to do. It's just a matter not to have the fear to prune. A lot of people are scared to prune. They're scared they'll do it wrong, or they're scared that they'll cut it too hard, or they'll cut the wrong branch off. And I always say to people, a bad prune is probably the same as a bad haircut. It will grow out again. So if you get it wrong, it's not meant to will, it will grow out again. The trees obviously grow regularly, so if you prune it wrong, it will grow out. And you can then have another go once you're up and see how you go. So don't be scared. It's better to prune badly than to not prune, because potentially it will help create the illusion that you want it to as well. It also helps the health of the tree as well. But remember, the more foliage on the tree, the quicker it dries out. So because there's a high demand for moisture from the actual soil. And if you've got a tree growing in a small amount of soil, and you've got a really hot day, then the demand on the tree to produce enough moisture is fairly high. And if it's growing in a small amount of soil, obviously then the moisture in the soil dries very, very fast.
Trevor, when you're cutting those leaves,
yes.
So some of those leaves you'll be cutting in half, right?
Yes, some of them actually have been
does that matter?
No, because potentially it's the regrowth that I want. So I want the regrowth from within the axil of each leaf to come out again. So yes, a lot of them will be actually literally cut in half, but the regrowth that will come back is what we're chasing. And the regrowth is going to come back at half the vigour as well. So very quickly, you can see we've started to bring the tree back to the right shape. And that doesn't take long. So now it'll sit there probably for another week, and I'll get some new little buds come out everywhere, and then it'll reshoot again. So, and you can pinch too. Don't be scared to pinch out the tips of a lot of this growth, because it is still quite soft, and it does pinch out very, very easily, as you can see. And just now, what will happen now is it'll reshoot again, and it'll reshoot with very small leaves. You can see I've cut a lot. It's put on a lot of regrowth over that period of time. You see the whole idea is I'm trying to develop the structure under there. See the stuff? You see the difference? I better turn that on. You see the difference in training? There's more subgrowth under here than what there is under here. It's not far off it. And then if you look at that, compared to that, you see the difference between another 10 years? You see the growth in there, the ramification, and the branch structure in there. And that's typically what you see on really old trees. You'll see very heavy branch structure on there and foliage on the tips. And therefore you'll see, if you'll come out and I encourage you to have a really good look at the size of the leaves on this tree. You'll be seeing the leaves, they're very, very minute and very, very small. One of the things I like about Catlin elms is I can get the leaf size down very quickly over a number of years. Mind you, as I said, the tree's been in training for a long, long time, ever since it was a little seedling. So keep that in the back of your mind. It does take time to get it to look like this. It won't happen overnight, unfortunately. But prune it, develop your structure, get your branching. So whether it's this big or whether it's as big as me, it still needs branching to the side. Some branches at the front, some branches at the back. The branches at the front and the back are there for dimensional purposes. They take the tree from a two-dimensional line drawing and turn it into a three-dimensional living piece of art. So you need branches at the front and you need them at the back. Guidelines for artistic design tell you that the side branches are always longer than the back and front branches. Okay, so they're always longer. The other, I guess, guidelines are that if you're going to put movement in your trunks, then your branches always, in most cases, will grow out on the outside of the curve and not on the inside of the curve. So typically you put your branches where you can on the outside. So if you curve the trunk like that, then the branch would grow here and not on the inside of the curve. And the reason I say that is if it was on the inside of the curve, it would be sheltered and eventually die back because the branches at the top will grow at the top. So typically, aesthetically, they do look much better on the outside of curves, no matter how drastic the curves are. If you can put your branches where possible on the outside. Bear in mind, it's very well for me to say you put them on the outside of the curve, but if you never get buds on the outside of the curve, you're going to have to wait. Usually with deciduous trees, you can be guaranteed of getting buds eventually in the directions you want them, but sometimes you do have to work with wherever they grow, in particular with trees like this, these junipers. Sometimes they never do what you want them to. Sometimes you're just plain lucky to get branches where possible on the outsides of curves. Other cases, you can actually artificially manipulate the trunk. So you can bend the trunk quite drastically to a branch that might be on the outside to give the effect of the curve as well. So there are many tricks you can use to massively bending branches on trees, and if they're prepped correctly, in a lot of cases they can quite easily, I guess, look what you want. So typically, it's the same with this tree here. That's how hard I want to cut it back. So typically, the biggest problem I've got is if you look around here, it's shot about that long to the end of the shoot. So if I cut off this here, there's the trunk line, there's the shoot. You see on the very end where it's divided off there? So it's shooting off here. This area, little area at the top here will grow in probably more chance of what this area here will do. The dominant hormone at the very end of there, called auxin, is taken over the tree and it's telling the tree to grow out of the tips. So the first thing you've got to do is, if you want to keep this foliage in here alive, you have to do something about this dominant shoot in here. If you didn't either chop it off or pinch it back hard, this will continue to grow out here, and eventually all these needles in here will die off, and you'll have the foliage out here now. So this will be stripped off like this, eventually, because it'll die off, and the foliage will be out there. Next year, it'll shoot out again. So all of this will eventually die off, and the foliage will keep moving further and further away from the actual trunk line, like you've got it here, and that's how you end up with big branches like that. These was once little shoots like that, and the shoot foliage dies off it goes, and continues to move further and further out from the trunk. Once you've got your structure like this that you want to keep the foliage where possible as much in here. You don't want to have it keep, because you don't really want the foliage way out here and structure out here, because when you look at the tree, it's going to look a little bit too, I guess, leafy. So what you've got to do is, you've got to prepare the tree for spring. So the best time to really savage these things is not now. You should have done a month ago, because this is already, as you can see, is in new growth. So unfortunately, I've lost the first cycle, but for the sake of tonight, it's not a real big deal, because it'll rebud back again. So what I've got to do is I've got to come in here with the dreaded scissors, because I can keep it in my hands and pinch, no problem, because it's quite soft at the moment. These things, as they mature, become quite spiky. A lot of people find they have allergic reactions to the squamatas and to sometimes the pecans, because as this soft foliage here, which is nice and soft now, matures, it goes really hard, and they turn into little needles, and you do this, it spikes you, and you get these little red welts come up on your hand. So that's one of the reasons people don't like these trees, is when they mature, later on in the season they become quite spiky to touch. And I've seen a lot of people with allergic reactions. They get welts on their hands when they prune them because these things become really hard and actually spike you really well too. And if you get spiked by a few of them, you'll know about it. Particularly when you're doing a demonstration, you just keep spiking yourself all the time. So what I've got to do, if I want the ramification to come further back in, I have to come back into here. It's no good me tip pruning it. So if I was to just do this, let's say for instance I was just to do this, there's the thing there, and I just pinch, you see all the little light green foliage, that's this spring now. If I just do this, which everyone probably tells you to do, and just pinch off the tips here like this, see how I just pinch the tips off? What's going to happen now is I'm going to reshoot out from the end of those tips. So really, back in here, where I really want it to keep active, it's not going to do a lot. It's just going to reshoot again from these tips, and it's going to whirl out like we saw before. It whirls out massively. So really, I've got to be brutal. I've got to come back in to at least here. I've got to prune it back that hard on the tree to force the new buds to come out of there. That's small. And believe it or not, trust me or not, I tell you no lie, when they come out of there, they'll be half the size than what they will at this size. So when this thing rebuds back again, the little buds will be so tight and compact you go, wow, I didn't realise I could get such a compact growth on a needle juniper. So when it rebuds a lot finer. And you can see and tell one of these junipers have been pinched regularly by how open and how long the shoots on them are. Because those that pinch back really hard regularly are really short, compact growth on them. They don't get a chance to really extend out that much. So I'll show you what I mean. What's going to happen is it's going to brown off at the point at which I've cut. So you need to be prepared that you will have a certain amount of browning off on the tree, and you need to not be too scared about that, because where you've cut it off, it's going to grow from around and underneath that point, okay? So it's not, you want to, so don't be too, I guess, nervous about the fact that you'll get some browning off. So if you have a look here, you'll see we've got browning on here. But if you have a look back in here, you'll see where the new growth is already coming out. There's already in between all of the branches in there, it's coming everywhere. So if I leave it like that and just tip prune, I'll get the thing in here. I need to come back into there. I need to cut back that hard on the tree, believe it or not. And then let it grow out from there. Now, if I've got short branches, what I should be doing is I should be selecting the buds that are on there that I want as well. Because potentially if I've been diligent and I've been pinching them out regularly, I'll have heaps of buds in here. I could have 5 or 6 little buds shooting out. What I would do is I'd pinch the buds that I want to grow in the direction that I want. And that's really going down to the micro level. So if I'm really diligent and I've got tiny little compact growth like I have on here, for instance, all I would be doing now is I'll be going, okay, which ones do I want to keep? I'll pinch out the centre one. I'm going to pinch back where I can to maybe 2 buds. And I just leave the 2 buds there that are growing in the direction that I want, just like that. And then they'll shoot off and I'll go, and you'll get more come out from the side there. So with something like this, because I've let it go, I'm going to be fairly brutal with it because I want to bring the ramification back onto the tree, and I actually want to bring the structure of the tree back as much as I can now. Because I really want to start working on refining this tree's ramification, starting to establish it. As the trunk and everything's already established. It's not a huge tree by any means, particular plot. The trunk's not very, it's not very big. It's quite soft, quite thin for a juniper. So really what I want to do is I want to start working on the ramification. That's pretty much what I want. I don't want too much more than that. So because I've got so much growth out the tip here, I have to go right back hard into here over the whole tree. So I'm going to, I guess, in some terms, brutalise the tree. So I'm going to come back really hard. With my scissors, I know it'll brown off. I'm not phased at all that it's going to brown off because I know that what I want is going to come from around and back further from there. So because this is so small, I can quite easily pinch it back quite hard, and I can probably move faster with my fingers than what I can with the scissors. So you see here, it's quite a soft tree. Because it's a pecanus, this one hasn't hardened up too badly yet. This one will actually be worse than the squamata. The pecanus naturally has a really, really spiky growth on it. Where I've got growth in here, be careful because you will get growth if you don't want it. Pinch it out too. If you've got growth that's right in here where you don't want it inside the 2 branches here, because I don't want it in here, I want it to grow out here, take it off. So don't waste the tree's energy, force the tree to grow where you want it to grow. So don't be scared to tell the tree who's the boss. Okay?
You said you're doing this out at the wrong time, so what would you do to compensate to keep your tree?
Oh, the tree will be fine. It'll reshoot again. It's just what I mean by the times I've lost the first initial spring growth, unfortunately. So if I'd done this a month and a half ago, it would be covered in regrowth back where I wanted it. But because I've let it grow for the sake of tonight, it just means I'm going to have to wait a bit longer now for the reshoot. Yes.
With maples,
Yes.
can you? I've got some in the front yard.
Yeah.
Can I? If I select, if I want to have branches, at the moment they're all in bloom.
Yep.
There's
Yes.
lots of
Yep.
things. Can I actually choose branches now still during the
Yeah,
day?
you can. The interesting thing about maples is they run long internote distances. If you let a shoot on a maple run out because you want to pick up the branch, you'll notice the distance between each set of leaves gets larger and larger and larger, okay? That's not what you want, unfortunately. So with a bonsai tree, you want as close an internode distance in here as you possibly can, because once upon a time, this structure here was an internode distance. Long, long time ago. So potentially, you can let it shoot out, but you need to remember, I'm going to have to prune that back next winter.
Yeah.
Because eventually I want the branch to work out. I want the distance between the branching out to be as compact as I can. So you're going to have to prune back. So yes, you can let it run out to thicken up the branch, but you will have to cut it back, because if you don't cut it back, chances are you'll have too long a distance between the next shoots. Your internode distance will be too great for the next structured branch. Not the leaves, the structured branch. But remember, you're growing from scratch the actual branch structure, like under there. Okay, so you're trying to set the minimal distance between here and here for each. So if you let it grow out too far, you'll end up with a distance like that, where it forks. And then it forks out even further, and you end up with these huge big branches way out here, and you cut it back. So the problem with maples is you do have to cut them back regularly to establish. Once you've got the base ramification under here, the structure of the branch is like this, not a problem. And then you can then pinch them back regularly. But
How long does it take you to get your base structure?
Right, the good news and the bad news.
Am I going to live long enough?
Just so I don't want to scare you, over 50 years training.
Yeah.
Okay, over 50 years training. Maples, unfortunately, particularly Japanese maples, take the longest. I've got some at home that I've been in training ever since I've been doing bonsai, and it's taken so long to get them to look like this, which took me 13 years. So Japanese maples, as much as they're a nice looking tree, take a long time to refine. They're just slow growing. They're not vigorous like these things. They don't naturally have small leaves like these do. They don't naturally have tight internode distances like. Now, there is some good news. Let's go off, but there is some good news. You can buy, like I've bought in the past, hybrid species of Japanese maple trees if you can find suppliers that still do them. So what I mean by that is you can buy grafted Japanese maple trees. So they're a hybrid species grafted onto a standard maple rootstock with short natural internode distances. And they are around. I used to buy a lot from Yamina red plants up in Lombok in the early period when they were grafting off their stock trees. Yamina are supposed to have some of the oldest rare stock Japanese maple trees in the whole of Victoria. So they used to graft regularly. The problem for them as a commercial business is a person, you guys come in, you'll pay the money, but someone will come in, they'll see a 12, a little six-year-old sitting with that. One's $50 and the other's 12. Which one are they going to buy? 12. You only see the value in the fact that this has got short internode distances. It's got more intense autumn colours and more intense spring. So for them as a commercial business, it's very hard for them to do that. So a lot of the specialist grafters are slowly stopped, and it's so hard to find decent small internode grafted trees. There's so many beautiful Japanese maple trees out there with standard, very fine, short internode distances, but they're just so hard to find. If I thought I would have brought some in, I've got some at home with bonsai trees that are very, very nice. I've also got them in the garden because they're just nice garden specimens as well, because they don't grow vigorous. They stay short, you can compact them very quickly. Again, that's just a standard Japanese maple tree. So it just shows you can do it with a standard maple tree. But if you want to help yourself along, look for the dwarf species of trees if you really like that type of species. Or look for trees that are like these. This humble noxious weed that has tiny little internode distances. Junipers, tiny little internode distances, provided you prune them regularly. You've got to remember you've got to prune them. Otherwise your internode distance is not big. It becomes, because it keeps marching out. Elm trees, as I said, great little trees for short internode distances. these are pretty good provided you prune them back regularly. So it's like everything, you've got to start from the right foot, I guess, and you will be rewarded to some degree. It's just starting with the right. Another tree that works really well. You can see how hard I'm putting that back. I'm not going to stand here all night and just show you because it will bore you to tears if you watch me prune the tree. It's like telling a bad joke. I don't know what it is. So another tree too that works really well. The humble Australian native. Go and have a whole discussion about Australian native trees here tonight, couldn't we? Melaleuca, Bractea, white cloud. Okay. They're often sold under different names. Golden gem, all sorts of names it's been given. The Melaleuca is one of the most undervalued trees that you can make fantastic bonsai trees from. They respond very similar to most of the exotic trees. They have a very soft, fleshy, fibrous root system. They have very short interno distance provided you treat them like the juniper. And the reason I brought this in is this has been let go and needs to be pruned back really hard. And the reason it needs to be pruned back, it does the same as the juniper. It marches out and out. And you see all the light green? That's the new foliage. If it responds the same as any of these, I've still got to keep the foliage as close to me here as I can. Now, a lot of these Melaleucas will bud back from old wood, believe it or not. I've actually butchered Melaleucas. I've taken them back to nothing like a rose tree. Yep. It's actually bud back. Sometimes you force yourself to buy a cheap $12 version of it to check to see if it's going to work. I've got a really old amaryllis at home and it needed to be pruned back really hard and let grow too long. So I bought a cheap one and I butchered it to see if it would survive. And it survived and re-shot back, so I did it to the big one in the hope that I proved that it would be advice. It did, it responded. But you see the Melaleuca? It's marching out and out and out. It's doing exactly the same as what the juniper is doing. Have a look. It's marching further and further out from the trunk line. You see there's new growth out here. It's doing exactly what the juniper is doing. So it's marching further and further. Probably faster than the juniper. If you have a look, that's actually marching faster than what the juniper is. Because it's so vigorous compared to juniper.
So could you do that to a small wattle?
Yes, you probably could. You just need to be careful with wattles. They're not as tough as these things. But the same principles here. Right now, this thing needs to be cut back really hard. If I don't cut it back now, I'm going to work harder and harder over preceding years to bring the growth in. I want tight, compact, I guess, tough pathology here. So to do that, I've got to treat this like I would treat any of these trees here, or the juniper for that matter. I have to be prepared to go in really hard right now and come back to the old growth. If I don't, there's a good chance that what will happen is I'll actually start moving further and further away from the juniper plant, or I'll be forced to actually almost roast prune the tree. I don't really want to roast prune the tree unless I have to. So what I would do now, and I would have done this a month ago, so I always do this sort of stuff on these sorts of trees before they restart their growth. So, and the only reason I do this is so I can maximise what growth period they have. And I'm going to cut the whole tree back brutally hard, right back hard into the trunk line, back to the old needles, because potentially that's where the new growth's going to come. So I'm just...
So that'd work on a clistamon then?
Yes, definitely on clistamon as well. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Nicolai is fantastic for it. Probably one of the best bonsai trees for gum trees is Eucalyptus Nicolai.
Yeah.
It naturally has a small leaf on it.
Which one's
Beautiful
that, sorry?
peppermint. That's the name of the second gum. That point. But you can see on here, this tree gets brutalised. I call it military short back in size, like this regularly. I have a certain amount of dieback. You can see a certain amount of dieback over the year on the tree here.
Take that right.
It's going to happen on trees, particularly over winter. You will get a bit of dieback. But potentially what's happening here is the growth is marching, as you can see, very quickly, further and further out. So you need to do this on a regular basis. Otherwise, you do end up with a very long-legged tree. And Melaleucas are just as aggressive at growth as what those junipers are. So they need to be cut back hard. I've just done a really big old one, same species as this just recently. And it's very compact growth on it, but again, much is very good. And you can then go back over these and just work out which branches are growing where you want them, which not. So obviously, as I said, don't be scared to go back over here.
How do you manage with repotting?
They're not too bad. I don't have a lot of trouble as long as I'm not brutal. The melaleuca has a very soft fleshy root, so it'll actually fall apart if you're not careful. So if you try to bare root it, you kill it.
Yeah.
So you never bare root Australian native trees. They just won't survive that type of brutality. The common theme with Australian natives, most people will tell you that they root prune the Australian natives between now and the end of this month. So they wait till the warmer part or the later part of spring before they don't generally do them at the time. Others will be done. So they wait till the weather's a bit warmer than what they would say with this usually. Like trees like this, you wouldn't root prune these now. You'd root prune them before they break into growth. So these would have been pruned obviously around September, August, late August, early September, somewhere in there. Whereas these could be safely root pruned right now, in my opinion. I've also root pruned these during that late winter, early spring, and not had a lot of negative issues come back from them. So you can also, I guess, be fairly brutal with these trees there. Now I could cut back in here quite easily, and I know that will shoot back from within those leaves in there, particularly if the tree is healthy. Again, you want to make sure your trees are healthy, okay? If the growth's not really strong on the tree, you just need to be a bit more careful, okay? But if you're feeding your trees well, watering them well, and they're putting on good growth, they should survive quite successfully any of this sort of treatment, provided they're healthy. So you just need to make sure that your trees are healthy. And that
So
you
in
are,
Australian natives, how often would you fertilise them then?
same as I fertilise normal trees, monthly.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. Be careful. A lot of them don't like certain fertilisers. Banksies, things like that. They're supposed to like a more balanced fertiliser that's low in nitrogen. And so you can buy specific fertilisers for native plants that are very low, obviously in nitrogen, and higher in potassium and phosphorus. They're supposed to be better. You can go to the Australian native nurseries like some of the ones that are all around, and you can buy their own brand. You can I use quite successfully sea salt and power feed on all of my native trees, and it doesn't seem to affect them in any way, shape or form. The guys at sea salt said to me they will not hurt the Australian native trees as long as you follow the dosing rates. But also bear in mind that if you are using sea salt as a fertiliser, you need to use power feed with it. Sea salt is not a fertiliser, it's a soil conditioner. The power feed is the actual fertiliser part, so you need to mix the both together when trees are in active growth. So if you want to obviously fertilise, then you need to use the right fertiliser as well. So just keep that in the back of your mind. If you are using sea salt, use power feed with it during the active growth season. You can use sea salt by itself when you root prune to help the tree recover. There's other products too that work just as well. There's I guess a bit of a kickstart, help me out for trees. Let's be serious, it's not unstressful for you to root prune the roots on the tree. It does actually sap their gift, it does give them a bit of a heart attack. They don't necessarily respond 100% well straight away. Some people sit there and stop, some, depending on how brutal you work with your root pruning, may even die if you haven't done it very well. So be wary of it. Root pruning, if it's done incorrectly, is very dangerous for a tree. That's why you want to do it at the right time. You want to give the tree the best chances that you can of surviving a root prune as well. So
I read that this particular species of mallow hates root disturbance.
yeah, I've never had any issues with
I've got it, it's a 6-inch bottle, but I'm nervous about it being taken down.
I've root pruned these regularly. Pull this whole thing out of the container, cut it back round. I've just done a 40-year-old Bractea. Put it back,
That's what I said.
I'm pretty confident
Do it
that it'll be fine, that it won't die back. So again, if you're nervous, go gentle on the roots. Don't brutalise the roots if you are a little bit concerned. Tend to be a little bit more apprehensive than brutal, I guess. You see how we can. All I've done now is I've just cut it back hard. I want to make sure that the growth stays as close to the trunk line as I can of each one of these three trees. So, and also, more importantly, it gives you a chance to sort out what's going on in here. You can actually declutter the growth that's in here as well when you're doing this. So it does serve a couple of purposes. You see, I've hit that pretty hard.
Yeah, it looks coastal, I like it.
It's certainly certainly been hit pretty hard compared to what it was. It'll reshoot very, very strongly. These things grow like weeds almost. It's been a very successful tree as far as its root growth. I've never had any major issues with it. Obviously, I want to give it every chance I can. So it gives me an opportunity to look at what's happening in here and just redirect the growth if it's not growing the way I want. I'll feed it too, particularly when I see it starting to grow. I'll feed this fairly heavily and try and force it to grow out of back in here. So I might get some old break back on it. Now, you see, it's not, interestingly enough, it's not grown or styled like a conventional bonsai tree. It's an Australian native, and therefore I have my own opinions on how Australian native trees should be grown and styled. So you see the same thing as the juniper. It does need to be taken back at this time of the year so that the new growth that comes on it doesn't march too far out. Because if I keep putting this off year after year after year, what I'll end up is a tree with foliage back here.
And you'll end up cutting it back shorter than what you've got it now.
And I'll have to cut that virtually like a rose tree. So this is almost preempting and trying. Saying that, I think with some certainty, I know if I did cut it back to a like a rose, it would grow back, but I don't know how much of it will survive. I'm not sure whether this tree will survive. I guess a major removal of major branches that are on it. So, but this is, I guess, to some degree, some insurance to try and keep the foliage as
Do you put that somewhere a little gentle now for a week or two, just straight out?
straight out full sun. I haven't really done anything that will, I guess, impact on the roots. If I root prune it, I might protect it for the next month or so. But because I haven't root pruned it, I've just cut back the foliage. I want to get as much sun in here as I possibly can. So I want to encourage as much regrowth back on the tree as I can. So I want to get the sun on here. One of the interesting things this time of the year, you want to get as much sun into the trees as you can because it actually does help, believe it or not, to give you tighter ramification and smaller leaf growth. The better the sun. So in some cases, you don't want to grow this trees under shade like this time of the year. Okay? You want to get the tree to expose as much sun as you possibly can at this time of the year because you want it to energise the tree to grow with as small as possible. If you put trees like this into too much shade, there's a good chance they don't get enough sun. So when they grow out, they actually grow out larger for it. So you want the leaf to be as exposed to as much of the sun as possible. So you don't want to be hiding these trees away. If you're like I do, I grow my trees out in the open where I possibly can, and then come the really bad seasons, I then put shade cloth across it as much as I can to protect them on that period of time. So, you know, this is crucial at this time of the year for these trees to have as much direct sunlight as possible to encourage good, strong growth. And obviously, you want to make sure that you are fertilising too, so that the tree grows back strongly as well. So you want to be exposing your trees to as much direct sunlight as you can at this time of the year, because it will encourage back budding. You look in here, come have a look. When you have a look at the back budding that's happened on this in the last 4 weeks, you'll see in here, this is all new growth that's all coming out in here in the last 4 weeks. So just proves you these trees do grow back on our wood, despite what people may or may not say to you about, I guess, the reality of that happening. So you see, it does.
What about your deciduous trees? Like we had that really hot day and that hot wind, and all my leaves just got burned.
Yeah, and there's not a lot you can do. Once the leaves are burnt, you then have got to hope that the tree can regrow back again. Citrus trees.
So I've put it now. I'm nursing it.
Yeah.
I've brought it out of
the extreme weather. Was it too dry?
No.
It's unusual for them to burn off because we haven't really had any real intense sun.
Oh, we had a 32-degree day down here, and it came from the north.
Did you have a lot of wind with it as well?
Yes,
so that's the problem.
and that got it.
And that's what will attack your trees. But that's the unique conditions you guys have got to put up with compared to what we do in Melbourne. We don't have that extreme weather change this early in the season.
We don't normally either.
Yeah, so, and sometimes you've got to be ahead of that sort of stuff to know that if you've got maple trees and suddenly the Weather Bureau tells you it's going to be ridiculous north windy and high temperature, you might have to move them out of that possible risk.
Pretty precise for a few days.
Yeah, and that's probably the easiest way to do it, because the problem with them is the air is so dry that the roots can't hydrate the plant fast enough. And if this dries out, then you're even in more troubles, because if the air temperature is so dry that the roots can't hydrate. These will just crisp and drop on very, very quickly. And that's the unfortunate thing with maples. They do it. Trove maples not so much as Japanese maples. They're a bit tougher, but again, you'll still have it with them. They'll still, I guess, drop off and die. So you see, as brutal as I've done it, that thing will take off fairly quickly and grow back from that. Now, saying that in mind, here's another example of what happens if you don't do what we're talking about. This is another example of what happens if you have either too many trees or leave trees outside and forget about them for too long. This is a beech tree, and it's just been let go for too long and not been given the TLC it should have had. You see what we're talking about, how it keeps marching out and out and out? It's just about to break into leaf. But look how far outside of the structure they are. They're out here now. I should have really paid attention to this tree, root pruned it, and actually cut it back hard before now. So this is a prime example of what happens with trees when you don't pay enough attention, when you just let them grow out. You see how long it is out here. It got shaded there because of the way it's sitting in my display area. So unfortunately, I didn't get enough sun, so it's actually died off here. It's died off here as far as the lost branches that were there. Type thing. It's very old, believe it or not. It's not necessarily the best tree, but it could quite easily be cut back hard, and it has to be risked. I don't think it won't grow back, because back here is all dormant buds under here, so I've got no choice, but I have to cut this thing back hard. And it comes right back into here. And really give this tree a hard time, because if I don't, I'm going to lose control of the tree. So unfortunately, the whole tree has got away from me far too quickly. You need to learn how to be this brutal if you want to be successful in bonsai, okay? You cannot afford not to be this, what's the word for it? Unloving. Because if you say,
This is tough love, is it?
this is what you call tough love, but there's a reason why it's tough love. If I don't have tough love on this tree, then it will just become a waste of time. So it will not be worth the effort required to make a decent tree out of it. So typically, if it's not brought back hard now, it's going to be almost impossible to bring it back again.
I think you just killed it. That's it.
There you go.
Will it be rotting next?
Is there anything left?
I have to start again. I've got no choice. So I've had to. Now, I will root prune this on the weekend too. So I'll actually give this the best chance to reshoot back again. And
What are you going to do, sorry?
We're going to root prune it.
So what if you didn't root prune?
It will still grow back, but it won't grow back as vigorously. I want to stimulate the root system. I want to give it its best chance to grow back and try.
So you're going to cut it from both ends?
Oh yeah, definitely.
What about just to pot up for a couple of years?
I could pot it up, but then I've got to bring it back down again. So I'll take out a bit. I want also too, very important, which I'm reminiscently not to say something to you about it, but can't help myself.
I can see that.
I have to be that brutal. Remember, it's cruel to be kind.
Yeah, I think you should. We should have done it before and after.
Yes. But,
Well, we have.
there you go. This is before and after. So generally, I'll seal these. I probably seal these for no other reason than I don't like to look at the obviously the scar I've made, and I don't want to have any disease or any problems with health in here. So I'll just use a typical Japanese cut paste just to actually seal these roots up. But I want to, and most importantly, one of the reasons I want to obviously root prune is not just to energise the root system, but I just want to check the root system to make sure that there's not a problem down there as well.
Oh, good governor, that
Yeah.
would see.
Because I've lost 3 branches, and I've never lost 3 branches off this tree ever. So I just want to make sure that there's not something in the root system
It's causing the diamond.
Trevor,
So yes,
that little knobby thing, did you take that off as well?
which knobby thing?
Halfway up the tree, facing you, lower. Yeah, there.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's dead, and it's a dead point comes out, so it needs to be cut back flat to roll the trunk over. I'm hoping wherever I take these big chunks out of the tree here that I'll get cambium exposure, and I'll actually get a bud. Now there's a good chance I'll get a bud. Any of those places that I've exposed the cambium later on the tree, Problem is, I may not get the bud where I want it, but there's a good chance, believe it or not, because I'm exposed to cadmium in here, that I'll get some buds growing out of it. Particularly when I root prune. It'd be really nice if I do. So I'll wait and see whether or not I do get a rebud back out of here. Type of thing. So it's interesting to see.
So you'll take that home tomorrow and take it out of the pot?
I'll take on Saturday. Yeah, I'll root prune on Saturday. And get the moss off it. So I'll go with moss. Expose the roots that are under there. Check the soil. Make sure it's all right. Just know the soil. Make sure it's not sour. And just make sure there's nothing in the soil that's actually cooled up underneath the holes in here. There shouldn't be,
Like sliders or
but
something?
hey?
Like sliders or something?
Yeah, it could be anything. But I just want to make sure the roots are all right because I haven't looked at the roots on this tree for probably 5 years. So it's one of the, this is typical of when you have a lot of trees and you just have one stuck in the corner and it just gets forgotten about, unfortunately. So, you know the old cliche, less is more. Be careful. Bonsai is a very obsessive hobby. And sometimes it's very easy to have too many trees to look after.
I don't want to.
And you have very little in the way of good trees. So remember, obviously that I need to prune this back, obviously, as well, and finish that off, because that's obviously not pruned back anywhere near as hard as it has to be, because ultimately I want to bring it back, the junipers peak, to look, maybe not quite that hard, but at least back to that base ramification under there, to help give me the effect I want, the illusion of age. So I remember we work with the illusion of age, but also too, you'll see there's bud back everywhere. I might want to use over something. So, same thing with all the trees, whether they're Botaniastis, noctilucans, whatever, you've still got to be prepared to cut them back as hard as they need to be, and to do regular renewal pruning. So it's reshot, I've pruned back, and I'll slowly encourage the growth to come out, and eventually it'll look
Like that?
in time. But again, you've got to slowly work towards what you see here. You've got to have the vision, and you've got to then work towards the vision, so that even whether it be a 12-year-old tree or a 30-year-old tree, you've still got to have the hindsight to look at what you want. And the reason I brought this in is just to show you that you can have a small tree, even smaller again than this, that can still look as good as a medium-sized tree, with structure and the right theories applied to it. And just be fearless when you need to. Don't be scared. It will grow back. It's like a bad haircut, it's going to grow back. You just want to see what's going to happen now. But again, if I wire the tree, maybe work out whether it's really the way the tree should be or what I'm going to do with the tree. Who knows?
So will you be listing that at all?
Hey?
Will you be listing that at all?
Missing this? No. No. A lot of the cases, the problem is because I've let it go, because it was going to, and I've not given it, or it's not been in my focus as much as it should be, because I've let it grow out. When a tree's maintained well, you tend to notice and you tend to spend the time on it, but when you let it grow, you tend to disrupt to the back. I'll get to you eventually, And unfortunately, they suffer for it.
How many trees do you have?
Too many. Probably about between 50 and 70 at any one time. And that's the problem.
You're sick.
That's the problem. Now, in saying that, if you can have more than 50 or 70 trees, that's great, but make sure you've got the time to maintain them. Because you need to remember this is a hobby, not ruining your life. So you need to have enough trees, you can have a life outside of the hobby as well. So I don't know whether there's any other questions. Paul?
Any questions, Trevor?
Any thoughts?
No, we're pinging him now, he's right.
Are you, depending on whether you're all brave enough to now go home and fertilise your trees?
This tree is made or not.
Has it? No, good to hear. Good to hear. I've done much worse than this. I've done some demonstrations where we make it fall off your chair at times, just for the result. And the end result, because I've always got the end result in here. I've always got the long-term goal of what I'm trying to achieve. In mind when I'm
Get that
actually
in
doing
mind.
something.